All right, so I just want to thank everyone for coming to this to this event. So as you know, right, like the event is about like solving UX UI issues in the space. If you went to AdCon this past couple of days, you know that like people have been talking a lot about the protocol level issues, like sharding, Plasma, but but I feel like what's more relevant to the average user and what's gonna really like push crypto to the masses is really just about like improving like the actual user experience of decentralized applications, and that's what this conference is about. So before I keep going, I just want to say thank you to our sponsors. So the event is sponsored by the Stable Fund, and by extension L4. It's also sponsored by Thunder Token, which is a Ethereum compatible scalable blockchain. It's also sponsored by Kyokan, which is like a consultancy in the blockchain space. Cool. So just to briefly explain the format of this event. So unlike most events, which is mostly about the presentations, so this event is actually more about the discussions, and the presentations are just really a way to get the discussions started. So we are gonna be having like a list of like maybe like 16 to 18 presentations today, and every presentation will be followed by a discussion as well. And finally, I just want to say that due to the huge interest in this event, we're actually accommodating more people than we originally planned for, which is why we're actually going to be having 3 separate rooms for the attendees. So right here we're going to have 30 people, and people who come later they're going to have to be sitting in the other room over there. And when that room fills up, we're going to actually have to put people onto the 4th floor. But throughout the day, we're going to be rotating to make sure that like everyone get a chance to get like the optimal experience in this room. So we're going to be taking lunch breaks. We're going to be taking some short breaks and dinner breaks. So during the breaks, I would encourage people to just like move around the rooms, right? So people they get a chance to sit in this room. Cool. I think that's pretty much all I have to say. Right, and also our friends from Balance, Rich Burton, has organized a party afterwards. So if you want to like go for a drink, it's gonna happen at like 8:30. Rich, do you want to tell people like where the venue is?
I'll have the details in my slides. Unfortunately, can't pay for the drinks because we haven't sold the
Right, exciting. I think we also have someone from Zero Knowledge Podcast. Is she here? Or cool, yeah. But I think someone from Zero Knowledge Podcast is actually gonna be going around and potentially interviewing people. So just like a heads up, just to I guess publicize this event. Cool, sounds good. So with that said, let's welcome our first presenter, which is gonna be Tom Creighton from Reactive Arts.
Can I ask a really quick question?
Sure, of course.
Are people comfortable with photos? Are we doing catacomb rules? Are people comfortable being quoted? Any concerns about any of that stuff? Or is this more like what happens here stays here?
Does anyone have comment?
Considering we have a really world-class video setup,
Yeah, exactly.
it's a big live stream.
Right, yeah. I should probably mention that like this entire event is being live streamed, so like there might be other people watching us already. Right.
It's not the NSA where we can see the camera.
Cool. All right, sounds good. So now let's welcome Tom Creighton.
What's the view of the live stream right now?
Oh, the camera is right here.
Back of your head.
He has his own feed of the slides, so he's actually going to be. Do you want to go to that past it?
Hi. So as mentioned, just a sec. There we go. I'm Tom Creighton, and I mostly have worked in agencies and startups, and just very recently started my own product studio, which has allowed me to work with a handful of crypto startups and teams over the last couple of months or so. And I've been having some really, really good conversations about what kind of challenges are being tackled right now. And I'm excited to be here today because I think talking about the user experience challenges inherent in the medium are things that we should be talking about now rather than later. And, I think by comparison, the web has had a lot of UX conventions sort of bolted onto it haphazardly over its lifetime. And I think there's really a big opportunity here to lay down some sort of fundamental crypto/UX or crypto UX conventions very, very early that will make a material difference in adoption. And so I want to talk pretty quickly about where my head is at in terms of opportunities and approaches that I think can be carried over from the world of startups, and then, as Derek mentioned, open the floor, because I think there's a lot of UX thinking represented in this room, and I'd really love to talk about how all of you are tackling this as well. So in the crypto and blockchain space, I think it's fair to say that UX challenges pretty much span the entire stack. Like from a UX perspective, certainly from a bit of an outsider perspective, I've only been working on this on projects in this space for a couple months. The majority of the focus in the crypto and blockchain community right now is on the mechanisms of the market, like the real nuts and bolts. And from that perspective, the current uses of crypto are not really directly addressing the interesting challenges that we are facing in the UX as UX practitioners. Like, I think there's much bigger questions from a market uptake perspective that we could be thinking about, just even as thought exercises. Like, what is the iOS of blockchain? What is the Shopify of blockchain? What does that look like? Are these even like sensible questions? And more succinctly, how are we doing at creating products versus utilities? And I know a lot of you here are just by virtue of the maturity of the market and this technology kind of straddling that line right now. So how can we actually approach this problem? Excuse me. And I think it's really never the technical aspects of a product that matter with UX. So I've worked for 3 startups that have reached mass market adoption. And the thing about reaching that type of user, which I think we'd probably all agree is the type of user that we want to make blockchain tech accessible to, is that they don't care about the tech stack at all. And I think this is a really unique challenge in the nascent UX of like dApps and blockchain, because the use cases I'm seeing and helping folks create right now are generally not aligned with everyday users, even though the technology could potentially benefit them. So, you know, they don't care that things are open source. They don't care that things are decentralized. They don't care about, you know, competing protocols or gas or reversibility. And these are definitely things that make the tech interesting, but not things that make the product interesting. And I think these are kind of the issues we need to consider. And thinking about the UX of those things in particular, to my mind, is kind of like asking, like, what is the UX of TCP/IP? Like, there isn't one. There shouldn't be one. And so, you know, I think to that end, it kind of makes sense. Like, we're still in an early stage of technology development here. It feels to me, having worked in this industry for a while, that we're kind of at where the web was maybe 20 years ago, not quite congealed into the platform that we know today, but like really filled with possibility. And the benefit of the web as a mature platform for building, or building products specifically, is that it has crystallized some interactions that we don't need to reinvent for every single app. So you know you're going to log in, you know you're going to have an account, you know you're going to go to such and such address to, you know, read tweets or check your investments or whatever. And these standardized patterns don't really kind of yet exist for dApps, but I think some foundational work has already been done that we can really lean on. And I don't think we're even in a space yet where we have like UX frameworks to work on blockchain problems in a truly native sense. Like the frameworks that we could bring to bear on the problems we're facing are really designed for like quote unquote traditional apps. They often have like the wrong assumptions baked into them, I think. So we've got a lot of product design tools, but not a lot of product design thinking that really aligns with how dApps actually work. You know, how can you have just like an everyday user login when identity is like decentralized or transient or completely unbound from the service in question? But that doesn't mean we can't bring a lot of the same thinking and patterns that lead to success in non-blockchain apps to bear on the products we're building right now. So I think there's a lot of parts of the methodology of design versus the tool chain of design that I could talk about. But I wanted to zero in on one particular aspect, something that I think is a very, very useful framing device, even as interactions and patterns and expectations around dApps mature. excuse me, something that isn't reliant on explaining crypto functionality, but speaks more broadly to the appeal of the product itself. So you may have seen this diagram before. How many of you have seen this? Nice. Okay. If you haven't, I really would recommend that you check out User Onboard. I think it's a really great resource for product thinking. So my opinion aligns very, very strongly with this diagram, that successful products aren't successful because of the tech. They're successful due to what the tech enables, the story that the tech is telling about itself. And right now, it seems like we're building like a lot of fire flowers, but not thinking about the larger narrative. So when I worked at Wealthsimple, which is a fintech startup here in town, we concentrated heavily on describing the character of the product, the narrative of the product. You know, if we look back at our Mario diagram, we want to create an awesome person who can do rad shit, but what we build is the fire flower, and that's the product, but it's not why people want to use the product. So how do we get from one to the other? And that's the sell of the product. That's the hook. And I think it's easy to think of selling as marketing, but it happens everywhere in a product. Like every time you want a user to take a certain action or complete a certain flow, you are selling them on the idea of doing that. They want to know, what they're going to do with it. The differentiator here is the connection that we're creating with our product, like the assumption that you're trying to get to an outcome, not just interact with a piece of technology. And I want to focus and really dial in on specifically that piece of the design thinking tool chain, like as it pertains to creating products. How do we deliver a really compelling narrative to hook people with the stuff that we're making? And what I think the commonality across really successful startups is that mechanisms aren't what sells. We need to enable that better version of our end user if we're going to reach the general public and not just the market that's really already invested in blockchain. So like, it's blockchain is not really a good sales pitch, but do X that you couldn't do before, parentheses, using blockchain, is at least the beginning of a good pitch. And I think blockchain has a lot of potential to deliver really interesting and useful functionality, but we're not going to be able to, get anyone to use it unless we deliver the narrative in the right way, unless we include them in the story of the product. So let's just really quickly blast through some quick examples of this thinking in real life, and I'm expressly not concerned with the design of these products, more so that they are just deploying this concept in how they present the products, how to create a compelling narrative around the product itself. And so I'm going to break down or try to break down why I think these work. So let's fade this out and concentrate solely on the messaging. Whether you sell online, on social media, in-store, or out of the trunk of your car, Shopify has you covered. What they are not saying is Shopify is a platform for e-commerce. They're not talking about the tool. They're talking about the action, the outcome. If you want to do these things, then Shopify is for you. Or Instagram, sign up to see photos and videos from your friends. Not sign up to look at photos on your phone and press a heart. They're not talking about the mechanism. They're talking about the outcome. They're talking about the why, what makes this personally valuable. I've included Wealthsimple, as you might expect, and our whole mission was to disintermediate the financial options, which were typically very unnecessarily complex and scary. I mean, simple was in the name because that's what we delivered. That was our significant differentiator in the market. And I put this example in because a lot of the applications that I'm seeing in the blockchain space right now fall broadly into sort of a fintech bucket, and I think the same lessons really apply. Our biggest takeaway was that people didn't care about saving. They didn't care about the mechanism of saving. What they care about is the vision of themselves retiring happily in 35 years. And they care about the clear path that we were going to give them to get there. So we could explain ETFs and risk tolerance all day as long as the day is long, but that doesn't move the needle on user experience. What gets people to sign up, what gets people to use the product is literally painting them a picture of how their money is going to grow over their life. And I bring up these examples because I think the blockchain and crypto space can easily fall into the trap of talking about the tech rather than describing the story of the user. How the user is going to be successful. And I don't want to, just stand up here and dunk on crypto folks. So let's look at a couple examples from the industry. Here's Ganache. Boom, what is it doing? Describing why you would want to do these things. Is there a clear statement of purpose? Yes, one-click blockchain. If you need to, run tasks, execute commands, inspect state, blah, 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 then this is for you. Are they talking about the mechanism? Yes, but not as part of that key takeaway, not as part of the hook of the product. And they're not leading with that because it's not as important. And one more, Status, and I think at least someone from Status is here in the audience. What up? I think this is a great example, again, because it doesn't speak to the tech. It tells me exactly what my use cases are. Browse, chat, make payments. What else? Secure, decentralized. Cool. And this is all it takes. You've hooked me. This is enough of a pitch to sell me on the rest of the page. So, the hook doesn't need to be like deep or huge. It's just enough to let me know why I, the end user, might actually do this thing. So I've been talking about marketing because it's a very, very visible example of this principle in action. And that's sort of a very strategic take on UX rather than talking about anything more tactical. But tactics can change based on product, based on the market you're trying to address, the users you're trying to capture. But the idea of a narrative, an outcome-driven hook for our potential user can act at least as a gut check at literally any level. Am I actually communicating something valuable? Am I speaking about the things that users care about? Am I giving them enough info so they can care, so they can take action on what I want them to do? And I think we can extract just a few key points from the examples I gave to be able to deliver that more holistic approach to product thinking and make it something that people actually want to use. So what are the things that I think all of those examples have in common to some degree, and what made them successful? What are the guardrails that we can actually put up around the work that we're going to do to help us make good product choices? Well, one, it has to have an understandable purpose. Can I really actually even understand what this does? Do I fundamentally get what the product even is, or what the feature is, or what a single interaction is? And two, it has to be personal. Can I understand why I would want to do this? Does it tell me why this is useful, and specifically useful to me? And three, it needs to have a payoff. Can I understand what happens if I do this? Why do I care? What am I personally going to get out of this? And at the very least, I think if we can answer these questions when we're thinking about how we're approaching product, we'll be applying some good lessons and building better things. Thanks.
So anyone feel free to ask Tom questions and actually to discuss. I'm going to go take slides over there at the other room. Tom, you can keep
Yeah.
Tom, if
Go.
anybody asks any questions, just repeat them into the microphone.
Got it.
Hi, my name is Boris. The question that I have is, how do we think about UX and design when in some cases we're both working on Lego blocks and Lego kits?
Yeah. So for the live stream, the question was, how do we think about design when correct me if I'm misstating this, when the product that you're building is sort of Lego blocks and Lego kits more so than like a...
Especially from an open source
Yeah.
perspective where we're working on components as well as products.
Yeah. I think having